going to be from Bertrand Venard, and he's going to be talking about privacy protection behaviors, a diversity of individual strategies. So Bertrand, the floor is yours whenever you want.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I believe that you hear me. I'm going to talk about privacy protection behaviors. And the main idea is going to explain the diversity of individual strategies, okay? I have to thank the European Union for the funding of this research. It's project 792137. I'm supposed to say that thing each time I give a talk. Once I get the funding, then thank you, the EU. And first of all, before starting to give you my research question, I would like to go to the next slide, if you could do so, because it looks like, okay, good. And just show you how diverse are the perspective of people regarding privacy. On this slide, what you see is the answers of Europeans through field work done in 2018, and 27,000 roughly Europeans were asked this question: do you avoid disclosing personal information online? And as you could see with blue lines, you got the percentage of people saying, okay, I'm going to try to avoid, or I'm trying to avoid to disclose personal information. And you could see there are differences within the EU. On the left side, you got Hungary with roughly 70% of the people saying, I'm protecting myself, basically. I mean, I'm summarizing, of course, because it's just one question. And on the other side, you got France, where you got 85% of the people saying, I avoid disclosing information. What is also interesting in this chart to highlight the differences is also the percentage of people saying, I don't care, basically, I could disclose personal information online. It's not a big deal. I mean, and of course, it's still only the answer to a single question. It's not research oriented, but it gives really a clue of the issue. And in this case, you could see that roughly 25% of the Danish are on the left side. By the way, it's HQ is Hungary, after is Denmark, after is Latvia, after is Estonia, Netherlands, Malta, Sweden. You got the average for the EU, Spain, UK, Luxembourg, Deutschland, I mean Germany, Ireland, because we are in Ireland, Finland and France. I mean, of course, the research in the EU gives all the 28 EU countries. But what you could see on this is that 25% of the Danish, at least in this survey, and to this specific question, were saying, okay, we disclose personal information online, and certainly for them, it's not a big deal. And you see some other countries are at 10%, even 5% for some countries. And there are differences of privacy protection perspective within the EU. And if we take a single group, we will see the same thing. In the same research in the EU, they highlighted a few others differences, not only in terms of citizenship, but also in terms of age. In terms of level of education, more people are educated, less likely they will disclose information, private information, and also in terms of position in the hierarchy. Managers are less likely to disclose information than people lower, let's say, the rank, okay? Then we have clearly a clue of diverse privacy perspective with at least this research. And next slide. please. Okay, thank you. Privacy has been studied for a while now, and I'll share with you this definition. I mean, there are plenty of definitions, but this one is well accepted. The extent to which an individual is concerned about the flow of his or her personal information, including the transfer or exchange of that information. And I will use privacy in this presentation using or having in mind this definition. In the literature, we got this idea of privacy paradox, sometimes called information privacy paradox. It's the idea that despite people may say something, they may do something else. And we have the same thing for many, many things that we do. I mean, we may claim to do something and we do something else. And researchers have been trying to explain this privacy paradox. I'm trying to explain the dichotomy between attitude and behavior. And reading this literature, of course, emphasized the need to do a little more research about the privacy protection behavior. And it's definitely the topic of this research, to study the determinants of privacy protection behavior. And in other words, my idea is to try in an exploratory research, and I will come back to that after, to explain what are the determinants of the privacy behavior of people. We have seen that we have diverse point of view. That's really clear. And we experience that in ourselves within the people around us. But the idea is trying to find out the key factors that could explain that one people may protect him or herself and another one will not. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Then, as I say, it's an exploratory research, and it's based on a qualitative approach. And 49 interviews were done in 2018-2019 in France. Face-to-face interviews with written consent, and the C-MRiC, which is the ethics committee of the University of Oxford, accepted, of course, this research and everything we do here. And the idea was definitely to look at the behavior of people, in this case, the students, regarding, in this case, privacy. One of the ideas we had was not to interview experts. And then, therefore, I decided to only interview people in social sciences and humanities, like sociology, psychology, people who are not supposed to be, of course, they are not, in computer science, and therefore are more likely to be, let's say, average students, at least in the French system, but everywhere. I don't claim here that interviewing 49 students, I have the ability to generalize to a bigger sample. That's not the idea. The idea is through an exploratory research, and 49 interviews is quite substantial, to really explore, to get ideas, new ideas about privacy protection behavior. One thing which is important to consider in this qualitative research is the duration of the interview. On average, 65 minutes, which basically means that the interviewees were able to really express their point of view deeply. And plus, and this is really important, the interviewers were able to ask plenty of probing questions, trying to really dig behind the facade of an answer, trying to really understand the attitudes, the behavior, where basically people were really, really doing to protect their privacy. We try to have a mixed sample of Mac and PC users, and female and male, and there are more female because usually in social sciences and humanities major and state universities in France, you have usually a little more female students, but we try to have a balance. And it's a requirement of the EU, and we wanted actually to explore differences in terms of gender. But at this stage, with this qualitative research, we didn't see much differences, okay? But I will not talk about that. I will focus on something else. And we have also master's and bachelor students. And as you could see, they were 22 years old on average. Next slide, please. And let's start with what we have highlighted in this research. First of all, we have clearly some respondents who had privacy concerns, okay? And therefore, when they have privacy concern, they also have some types of strategies, and by strategies, I will mean the type of different behavior they really forecast and really have to protect, in this case, their privacy. And this is the case. I would never post anything about myself naked or in a bathing suit. I don't understand that on Facebook, people tell all about their lives. I'm not telling about my life. I'm not going to put personal details on how my day went. That's really clear in this case of one person really describing her concern, it's a woman in this case, and also trying to highlight already a few things. In this case, she's highlighting something which was clear for the respondent, and I will come back to this point. It really depends on the type of information that people are releasing on the internet, that they will really adjust their privacy protection behavior. Okay, but of course, if some people had some concern, others didn't have so much concern. But let's go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. And one of the reasons that could explain the privacy protection behavior is the well-known ideas of perceived vulnerability. And I should have said that thing in the introduction, but that's an opportunity for me to explain or clarify that thing. Part of the theoretical framework that I'm using in this research could be similar to other research done on cybersecurity, because I do research obviously on cybersecurity, and I'm using the protection motivation theory in this case. And you're also really familiar with this concept of low perceived vulnerability. And the main idea here is the fact that some people do believe that they are not really in a dangerous position when talking about their privacy issues. They think that the frequency, and the idea of vulnerability is there, the frequency of issues is very low. And at the same time, there is also a low perceived severity. They usually imagine that the consequences will be very, very low. Then if you really imagine that everybody has the perception that the vulnerability and the severity of issues regarding privacy are low, this person is obviously not likely to really protect himself or herself in terms of privacy. Then in this example, I think I am of so little interest for someone to steal my data and blah, blah, blah. But it's already said at the beginning, I am of so little interest. Nobody is interested by my information, and why should I care about my privacy? That's a clear explanation for some respondents. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Then before continuing to explain the behavior of what I call the surrenders, let's explain what are doing the defenders. Well, we find in our sample some people were clearly surrenders. They really didn't care about their privacy. And one of the explanations I've already given to you is low perceived vulnerability and low perceived severity. But there were also others who were privacy defenders. There were some concern. There are values, the strategy. Some of them explained that they were trying to have in order to protect themselves and at least their privacy. And of course, we know these different strategies, but it's interesting to see what they really describe and what they didn't. Okay. In this case, they spoke about privacy settings, switching browsers, using Quant or DuckDuckGo, limiting the amount of location-based information, especially regarding pictures, using strong passwords to access social networks. Ad blocking software were extremely often used by students. And also some people, in terms of privacy protection, were also all the time Googling themselves in order to see if there were any leak of their private information that they could mitigate, maybe. And it was part of their strategy because there were some specific question about what do you do, basically. And again, as I say at the beginning, there were probing questions to really clarify how they were protecting their privacy. Next slide, please. Then, of course, we got the defenders, but we got the surrenders. And for the EU, by the way, the EU research that I highlighted previously, one of the results of this survey done among 27,000 respondents was that around 10% of the respondents didn't really care at all about their privacy. That's not much. However, when we have 10% of people in an organization that may give away some private information, there are people who are putting themselves, the people around them, and their organization at risk, obviously. Then even if it's 10%, and I have no idea of the percentage for students, because again, it's exploratory research, but still, well, the idea is that they put the organization at risk and themselves, and it's really worth to understand what are the factors that explain them not taking care of their privacy. Here it's a verbatim, a long one, okay? I got used to the idea that I've decided to use the internet while knowing that my data was not going to be anonymous and not necessarily destroyed, okay? And then you have this long verbatim, and you have a complete explanation of the respondent. What is very interesting, not only the fact that the person clearly explained that he or she, I don't remember, is a surrender, but at the same time, we have an explicit description of the fact that the people have a balanced view, and it's really clear in the literature. And some people, I didn't develop that thing as a paper, but it's already clear in the literature that when people are deciding to surrender their privacy, there is a balance between the plus and the minus. And the plus will be having the access to some services like Facebook or Google in this example. And of course, the minus will be, in this case, giving away some data. But what you see here is a very conscious decision to surrender the privacy. And it's in itself quite interesting. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. And I have only two more slides. I'm checking the timing at the same time. As you have already understood, one of the factors explaining the privacy protection dynamics, the fact that people are actually changing their privacy protection. It's not really, and it's one of the value, I would say, of this exploratory research, to look at these dynamics, to really explain that people could be a little stable, I imagine, about the low perceived vulnerability and the low perceived severity. They believe that frequency of having is information stolen on the internet, and also the consequences are low, and therefore they surrender. But imagine this is stable, and certainly it's not the case. But what we have seen in the interviews is the fact that the privacy protection behavior of the students were changing along the time. And of course, we're trying to understand what was the explanation of these dynamics. First of all is what I call, maybe badly in the paper, catalytic information, and the definition I've given in the paper is not about catalytic event, okay? But let's use more catalytic event. And basically the idea is when we got in the news any events that are about privacy issues, the likelihood of the people to protect their privacy will increase, which is, I mean, really common sense, but really the students, and it really makes sense, clearly. And it was something that it was said to us many times. Example, Cambridge Analytica, before Edward Snowden. In France, because the interviews were done in France, in the last months, there was a case of a teenager, a woman, who gave some extravagant comment on a social network. And maybe extravagant is not the word, but they say some comments about actually a religion, which was very dramatic in terms of consequences for her, because she received death threats, and she was forced to get out of school, and it was all over the news in France. And her social network accounts were hacked by people, and then there are persecution about that thing now. But if you have this type of catalytic event where privacy issues are really in the news, the students are more likely to pay attention to their privacy protection. Second element to explain the dynamics is what I call social versus institutional space. Basically, it's the idea that some respondents perceive that internet is not equal to internet, or I mean, say things together. Some people may think that Facebook is private, and others will think that Facebook is not private. And therefore, they have a perception of some spaces on the internet as being protected and private, and others are being more broadcast. It's really a perception, because we got Facebook on both sides. Then the social space, it's a label I have, and if you have any idea for another label, you are welcome, of some space on the internet which are supposed to be private, exclusive, and very personal, and in this social space. And it's really a perception. And of course, they could change the settings and they could share information with their friends, but still, even without doing that thing, I mean, they will still perceive that's my space, let's say. And maybe more than social space, maybe personal space. And then they will be likely to share any type of information. And others, social network especially, were more institutional. And a good example was LinkedIn. And when students will say, I will share a personal picture of my vacation on the personal space, social space, but I will not on institutional space. And therefore, the privacy protection dynamics were changed according to the space where people were sharing. Obviously, the second element was the topics to be shared. I mean, a lot of respondents say, okay, in terms of privacy protection, it depends. And it depends on the information I share. And by information, I mean any kinds of information. It could be a picture, it could be a comment, it could be an article, it could be a like, and people were really aware of the fact that if I like something, it means something about me. If I like the comment of somebody else, this really connect me with the thought of this person at a certain moment. And topics to be shared is really any kind of information through any means that you share and broadcast. And depending on this information, the privacy protection dynamics was different. Our respondents also argue about the influence of their age. Of course, they were not so old, but they really, all of them, highlighted that they went through various stages. And really, a lot of them described how naive they were, especially on the internet, or sharing any information with others when they were younger, discovering the fact to be online. And some of them even describe some very personal example of victimization, where they were victim of bullying, for example, at school, when they will be in secondary school, for example, or it was their friends or the member of their family. And then with this, let's say, bad experience, they really decided to change their privacy protection dynamics. That's really another factors that really could explain the privacy protection dynamics. Next slide, please, and it will be the last one. Thank you. And one last factor and that explained privacy protection was also the feeling of capability. You are well aware of this concept of self-efficacy. In this case, I call this the reverse, the privacy protection inefficacy, the idea that some people believe that they cannot protect their privacy. I can protect myself when I am involved in a street fight. But if I get my data stolen from the internet, since I don't really have specific skills, I'm really helpless, really. There is nothing I can do. That's really a summary and a clear link actually here between the privacy protection inefficacy and the fact that people believe that since they cannot do anything themselves, they are not so concerned and they are not actually at the end really trying to protect themselves. Okay, thank you for your attention. I think I don't have much minutes, but I will be ready to answer any of your questions.
All right, thank you, Bernard, for this this interesting talk. So I've got like a couple of questions here. The first one is, should we establish then strategies for transgressing privacy? So for example, if someone wanted to share a picture online, right, or share a private picture with someone else, should then they have a strategy or use specific applications to do so?
Well, I'm not sure. I heard you, but I'm not really sure. Let's say that there are some strategies that people could apply to protect their privacy, obviously, and these strategies could be extremely simple at the level of the individual. If you talk about at the level of the organization, it's definitely a question that we do have here, and I say here in Oxford, in a university or anywhere, and what kind of organization could do in order to have the people considering these determinants of the privacy protection behavior, change their behavior. And it's a very important question, and to be honest with you, it's yet a question to be answered, and we should do more research about that thing. And in the last interviews we have done, in the last month, we are continuing this process, and we have added, I think, 15 new questions about privacy. And I will receive the last transcript this Friday. And clearly some of the added question we have for the new batch of questions was exactly about this question. Because
All right.
Definitely, we asked the question previously to the students at the state university, and we had immediately the same question. Say, what could we do? How come we could really mitigate the fact that there are some privacy surrenders? And then maybe next year I will present the result. I'm sorry to drop, but really
we
it's an important
look forward
question.
to it.
Yeah,
we look forward to it. So another question would be, so what advice would you give you if we want to retake some control of our image? Let's say our image is hijacked by someone. So not having any data or having a partial amount of data on the internet allows, for example, for speculation, right? So someone could speculate something based on the data that I've put on the internet. So would increasing the amount of data I put reduce the speculation or increase the speculation? Because if I provide data for every aspect of my personality, then it's more difficult for someone to actually criticize me on one aspect.
Okay, then I think that there is definitely, first of all, a very contextual answer to give. And it's something for cybersecurity. It's extremely difficult to say, in general, you should do that. I mean, you should really give a case-by-case answer. You have to really look at a case to really clarify what is going on, okay? But having said, put that thing aside, I could say a few things. First, we have to be, all of us, extremely paranoid, okay? And that is a really spirit we have to put in our brain. We are all at risk of our information being stolen. That if you have already the idea of there is nothing like low vulnerability, there is nothing like low severity, and if you have that thing already in your brain, that's the first step. Second step is you need to create a digital branding of yourself. I'm not a specialist of marketing, and it looks like I'm a specialist of marketing. It's not my topic at all, but really you have to pay attention to what kind of information you are releasing and you are spreading, and you have to consider that this information you are going to share with your worst enemy. That's the idea of branding yourself on the internet. And the idea and the question you ask always to yourself, will I be willing to share this specific information to my worst enemy? If the answer is no, just you stop it immediately. Then, of course, it could be a question of your picture. It could be a question of describing your CV. It could be a question of all the small information that could be linked to you. Just an example, on LinkedIn, a lot of people let their networks open. It's basically having your mobile phone accessible and your list of contacts accessible to anybody. And I got plenty of contacts on LinkedIn, and sometimes if I have sometimes on the train, I will look at, do they have their list of contacts open? That's really madness. Then again, I'm coming back to the second point, is really you have to strategize your behavior. Think that you release information with the idea of, will I be willing to give away this information to my worst enemy? And look at tiny details, especially your address, your personal mobile phone, and things like that. Then once you got the good spirit, it's a good step. And third, it's really necessary to look at yourself quite often, Googling yourself. And you could set up on Google, for example, and that I don't give any funding for my research, and I could really give them away. And you could Google yourself, and you could have some alerts for free about yourself. And you could have an email once a month highlighting to you what is going on about you. And then you may have, in this case, two types of reaction. One case, you do nothing because it's not a big deal. And in some cases, you could react. And it depends from one country to another one. You have to look at the regulation. And there are some specific agencies. In the UK, it's really well done. In France, it's very well done. In Germany, it's very well done. In plenty of European countries, it's really well done. Of course, in the US and other countries. And sorry, I didn't name all of us, all the countries. But in plenty of countries, really well done, where you have specific agencies, organizations that will be helping you in order to deal with such issues. But don't let it go, not let it go.
All right, and so we've got another question. Do you think that ignorance and lack of due diligence is enough to get people's privacy exposed while using the internet?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, excuse me.
Do you think that ignorance and lack of due diligence is enough to get people's privacy exposed while using the internet?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, of course, that's not enough to really consider that thing. And we have also people that need, for example, that could be forced due to a specific situation to release information. Just give an example. We do participate to academic conferences, and sometimes they ask our private address to put our private address on a paper we publish, and therefore the organization or the event is setting the situation where we do release information. Then I never answer to this question. I repeat myself, and I give always as home address my institution address, always. And the phone number, never the mobile phone. It's always the office phone number, even if they ask me to give the mobile phone number. But it's just an example of the fact that people may not ignore privacy issues, but they could be in a situation that they are forced to release information and they surrender due to this type of dynamics which are external to themselves. That's a very good point. Thank you. I don't hear you.
Sorry. Our final question then from Alex. Something that confuses organizations, even privacy and security consultant, is the ownership and custodianship of personal data. The confusion is pretty obvious when organizations perform DPIA and security risk assessments and decide on the risk treatment, especially on risk acceptance related to risk on personal data without even consulting individuals. What advice would you provide to organizations in regard to performing these risk assessments?
Yeah, well, I have an easy answer to give to you. We have to be extremely careful about 1 minute consultant. And the 1 minute consultant is giving an answer without looking at really the context. And let's imagine we are talking about a company in the nuclear industry, or we are talking to an hospital, or we are talking to whatever, there are some sensitive industry, financial industry, where definitely the issues are going to be much higher than in a bakery. We are talking about workers in a bakery, and therefore I will find it very hard to really give a general answer. However, we know that there is always the different layers of protection: tools, strategies, processes, and human layers at the minimum. Okay, we know that thing. And of course, we have to look at all these various components to really find out the best, let's say, framework to protect organization, especially considering the privacy. And definitely, if we look at the human factor, there are things to be done. And we'll just give just one recommendation. Despite, as I said previously, it's very contextual recommendation that we should always give. is the fact that we need to avoid to have too much top-down strategies, processes, and tools, and try to have some down-to-top strategies and tools and processes. And by that, I mean that we need to really ask to the people in the organization, what are the issues they face? What do they do practically and what they don't, okay? And therefore, from their point of view, base all the things we do in order to try to really protect not only, let's say, the organization, but also each of the stakeholders which are within and outside the organization. And by doing so, we empower the people in the organization, and therefore they may take more the strategies, the processes, and everything that we will give to them as being their own part of the game, and they will really have the feeling that it is their own power. They belong to the organization. It was designed by them, for them, and of course, at the end, they are going to buy it. I'm not really only strategic. I really strongly believe that if you take this approach of asking the people, you are more likely to succeed.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this.
Yes.
So thank you, Bernard, for this presentation. So now we will have 30-minute break, and then we will have a keynote of Stephen Lipner. So thank you again, Theo. Thank you again, Bernard, for the presentation, and have a great day.
Okay. Thank you for all the excellent questions. It was really, really interesting. And see you later at the conference then.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.